So hey folks, my name is Brad, and if you've been following along with my weekly videos so far this spring, you may recognize this field that I'm standing in today. My first trip here, I found a handful of old copper coins from the 1700s, and my second trip here, I found even more coins, but I also found an incredible Revolutionary War button from the French 13th Regiment. Now, if you didn't happen to catch those videos, I will link them down below in the comments section. Well, as you can see, we are back once again to complete the trilogy and see if maybe I can find a few things that I missed on my first two trips. Now, if this is the first video of mine that you've seen, as I mentioned, I post one of these every single Friday. So if you like what you see here today, consider subscribing. Maybe I'll just see you next week. I'm not gonna do any more talking. I'm gonna get my metal detector out and see what we can find. 62. Wow, look at how old that button is. So I have found dozens of buttons here in my first two visits, and for the vast majority of them, they were just plain flat buttons. Some of them brass, some of them lead pewter, some of them a white bronze. I did find that 13th Regiment Revolutionary War button, which was brass, but this style you don't come across too often. Hopefully you can see how flaky it is when you look at it edgeways. It's almost like it's in layers, and it has a white patina on there. This is a lead pewter button, and these are old. Going back now to the middle of the 1700s, maybe a little bit before that. But the thing that always gets me excited about these particular buttons, this is the kind where you're looking for a USA, for a Continental Army button, George Washington's Army. Unfortunately, this one is blank. It was probably a homemade button, but whenever I see that flaky button with a big old shank on there, my heart always starts racing. Oh man, is it gonna be a USA? Every time but once, it isn't. I did find my one USA button. But if I'm finding these here, and I found that French 13th Regiment Revolutionary War button, very well could be one of these out here with the USA on it. Wouldn't that be something? Let's find out. 82. Oh boy. Awesome. Wow. Well, metal detecting in a lot of ways is just like fishing. You have to kind of leave expectations of how your day is going to be at home, because you could very well just not find anything, regardless of how promising the place is. But this particular place, it's pretty reasonable to expect to find at least one fragment of a shoe buckle. And that's exactly what we have here. Now, as we look at this, we can't actually see any of the telltale signs that it's a shoe buckle where the pin would have gone across and all of the mechanisms in the center, but just seeing the very gentle curve on this buckle, and I'm pretty sure I recognize this design from fragments I found here in the past. We can confidently say that this is an end of the 1700s fragment of a shoe buckle, and this would have possibly been silver plated or gold plated, maybe just polished up brass and worn on the shoe or boot of somebody living over 200 years ago. Amazing. Just a fragment, but we know what it is, and I am happy with that.
All right, this is a beautiful sounding loud 86. You see that? Oh, heck yeah.
Man, how awesome did that come out of the ground, opening up that clump of dirt to reveal an old copper coin, and there is text on there. I don't recognize it upon first glance, but I have not yet found a copper coin from the 1800s here. It's all been 17. Oh, BER. This must be a Hibernia. Hibernia is an Irish halfpenny. Actually, no. It's not a Hibernia. It says Liberty Look at this. We have a wreath around the center. Wow. This is, in my opinion, way cooler than a Irish. Oh, heck yeah. All right, I got it cleaned up just about as much as I can out here. And this is an amazing coin. Hopefully you can make out up here the words Nova. Would have also said on the other side, Constellatio, Libertas, Justitia. This is a 1785. I can just barely make out that date down here at the bottom. Nova Constellatio coin. And the reason these coins are so special is because this was the very first coin struck under the new United States back in 1785. Incredible. I've only found maybe 3 or 4 of these ever. And every single time I find one, it's just as special as the last. Quintessential New England colonial metal detecting find, a Nova Constellatio copper coin. And considering how long it's been in the ground, I am more than happy with the condition. You can almost make out all of the text, you can see the wreath, you can make out the starburst, you can see Nova, and maybe with a little work at home I can get it looking a little bit better, but even if not, what an incredible find. This place, let me tell you, the variety of copper coins that I have found right here outdoes anywhere I've ever been ever. Vermont coppers, New Jersey coppers, Nova Constellatio, British coppers, Irish coppers. Amazing. And the cherry on top, a Nova Constellatio. Over the moon. Man, unbelievable.
$78. The tool of some kind.
So generally, when I'm out here metal detecting, I am doing my best to avoid digging up iron. Now, that would mean that I'm missing cannonballs and muskets and knives and a lot of pretty cool, interesting things, but almost always it's junk. Here's a piece of like Dutch oven. Here's another piece of it. You can see there's the seam. Here's another piece. It's almost always what it is, or nails. So I usually try to avoid it. But inevitably, obviously, I find some still. And occasionally it's something interesting. So this thing, I have absolutely no idea what it could be. But you can see kind of there's like a crease right here. It's crudely made, which, you know, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it does strike me as being from the time. Forged by a blacksmith with a hammer. This isn't like a modern machine-made tractor part or anything. This is interesting. So as you just saw, I found this thing. Either one of these could have been a little Derringer pistol or a old 1700s knife. Said we got whatever these things are. Do you think they went together? Maybe not. Pretty cool finds. Let me know what you think this is. Let me know what you think this is. I assume farm related, but maybe someone out there will surprise me. Let's keep going.
This is a very low tone in the 30s. Oh, nice. Excellent.
Everybody know what that is? Of course you do. It's a thimble from over 200 years ago. And maybe you noticed by the size of it here, this doesn't even come close to fitting on the end of my pinky finger. So more than likely not used by a man, probably a child or maybe a lady. And you know, the general consensus with people who metal detect when we find thimbles, and we find a lot of thimbles out here in farm fields, is that they were using them to bag up goods. Now, it's pretty likely the kids were helping with that, but because of how thin and small This doesn't really strike me as something used for agricultural work. This was more than likely used to repair clothing. And so the question is, why is it out in a field quite a ways from where the actual home was? And we have to bring ourselves back to the 1700s. There's no electricity. If you wanted light inside the house, it's either a candle or a lamp. And so the easiest thing is, on a beautiful day like today, just go outside and do your work. That, in my opinion, is more than likely how this very small thimble got out here. Little brass thimble, more than likely used for repairing clothing by the lady of the house or maybe one of the children. No idea why it ranked so low on the metal detector. I suspect because there's this layer of nails and iron kind of masking the targets. So this was a very low target, but happy to find it. I'm glad I took a chance on it. So cool.
This is a pretty faint 87, but it's there. Very deep, I think. Well, that certainly looks like a kettle point, but given where we are, it doesn't really make any sense being here. Doesn't make any sense being here.
You know, for myself personally, and this probably goes for many other people who metal detect, whenever I find anything, my mind automatically goes to whatever the coolest possible explanation is, right? If I find a musket ball, oh, maybe this was used in a battle, right? Or if I find a little round piece of iron, maybe this was like canister shot from a cannon, or, you know, mine goes to the coolest thing. Well, I just found a perfectly triangular piece of brass, and having now had the opportunity to metal detect a native trade site where they were getting copper kettles and cutting them into arrowheads in the 1600s. When I found this, I was thinking, of course that's what this is. What else could it be? But we have to consider the context of where I am right now. I am sitting on where there used to be a foundation of a home from the end of the 1700s. It doesn't make a ton of sense for there to be a 1600s Native American arrowhead right here. It makes way more sense for there to be copper flashing cut up in this very particular location. This was a farm, still is a farm, but there's always the possibility that it isn't, that it is a Native American brass kettle point. I'd love to hear your thoughts, anybody who is familiar with brass kettle points. Hopefully you saw just how deep this was. Incredibly deep. It is very, very sharp to a point, perfectly triangular. Certainly not going to throw it in my trash bag. I'll put it in my treasures box, and I don't know, maybe I'll do some more research on this area. Maybe it is a brass kettle point. Let me know what you think.
$74. Nice.
Well, I just got done talking about iron and the possibilities of finding interesting things, and I said, oh, wouldn't it be cool to find a knife? And there we go, a knife blade. Unfortunately, it's not the whole thing. I would guess not a table knife, just based on how thick it is. I have found many, many iron table knives from the end of the 1700s, and typically they're quite a bit thinner than this. And not quite shaped like this. Usually they're kind of rounded on the end. So I'm going to say that this is a perhaps folding knife or like a hunting knife. But there we go. There's a perfect example of why we investigate those iron targets. Super cool.
71. Buckle. Oh, found quite a few iron horse tack buckles so far today, but nothing like that yet.
It's a little bit mangled and very, very rusty. But this is called a chape, an iron chape for a shoe buckle, of course. I have found so many fragments of different shoe buckles here. That has been the ongoing joke with the series of videos at this particular location. Just so many broken shoe buckles in this particular place. Well, here we have another piece of one. I don't believe we found any other inner workings of shoe buckles here yet, so this is the first one. This would have had 2 teeth on here, and the leather strap would have gone through. This was essentially the clasping mechanism for, you know, the shoe buckle. They also came in brass. Iron ones are harder to find though, because they don't sound as good on a metal detector. You know, it's just a small, rusty rectangle. But for folks who really enjoy the history of the 18th century, metal detecting places like this is a great find. It's a great find for me. 1700s shoe buckle shape. 53. What do we got here? That's interesting. Well, I was wondering when this would happen, but I didn't think it would happen quite like this. As of right now, I have found 7 old coppers from the 1700s here, pennies, and 0 silver coins, which you don't find silver coins very often, but considering how much money I found right here, it wouldn't be out of the question. Well, I did just find a little piece of silver, but it is not a coin. As you can see here, I did rub it quite a bit just to make sure that it wasn't silver-plated brass. But what we have here is just the smallest piece of a silver spoon handle. You can see it's fairly black from tarnish, but in some spots that silver is really shining through. It's probably not 100% silver. There's probably quite a bit of copper in there. But, you know, it made sense. They had a lot of money to drop. Silver spoons make sense. Wish it was the whole thing. Earlier I found a piece of a spoon like this, pewter, and then just a few feet away I found the bowl. So maybe it's around here somewhere. I'm gonna stick very close to this area and see if maybe we can find more of it. But even if not, hey, a little piece of silver. It's almost like a little silver bar. Not quite. All right, folks, well, I am gonna call it a day. It may not have seemed like it in the video, but I have been out here since 9 a.m. It is currently 5 o'clock, and I did not take any breaks. Non-stop metal detecting, and the pile of treasures today is the smallest of my 3 trips here, but I still had a blast, and a few of these things are really pretty amazing. Got them all laid out here. Let's take a look. Okay, starting in the back, we have a couple large pieces of unidentified iron, a knife blade, 9 buttons, and a couple of them are really quite pretty. I do not believe those symbols represent anything. They're just beautiful buttons. We have one 2-hole button here, and of course a really old crumbly pewter button as well. 6 more fragments of shoe buckle, one of the pieces being iron and then the rest brass. I do not believe any of these go together. So there's at least 5 different brass frames at this site. We have a very dainty, more than likely child's thimble, a very small fragment of silver, I'm guessing spoon, and then the possible Native American kettle point. As we said earlier, context matters. This does not make any sense being here. We didn't find any other native artifacts, and I'm not aware of any villages or trading sites anywhere near here, but you never know. And then last but not least, we have the Nova Constellatio copper, 1785, an incredible piece of US history, the first coin struck by the new United States. Not bad condition either, considering how long it's been sitting in the ground. All right, folks, I want to thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and hopefully I will see you here next Friday for another adventure up here in the mountains of Vermont.